Peter Waterman, RFD, has held appointments over the past 50 years in the fields of land use analysis and planning at the University of Melbourne, coal and the environment at the Australian National University, and environment and population health at Griffith University. He was the Foundation Director of the Institute for Regional Development and Associate Professor at the University of Western Australia. From 2004 to 2011, in his capacity as Coordinator, Climate Change Coasts and Catchments, Peter was responsible for the development of accredited professional development programs in climate change adaptation, integrated coastal zone management, and environmental change management. He has advised and lobbied governments and boards of commercial enterprises and worked as a consultant, research director and managing director of private companies. Peter has also served as a reserve officer in the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Naval Reserve and was awarded the Reserve Forces Decoration in 1988. He holds the positions of Managing Director, Environmental Management Services Proprietary Limited, Adjunct Professor, Institute for Land, Water and Society at Charles Sturt University, and Adjunct Associate Professor, Sustainability Research Centre, University of the Sunshine Coast. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Peter Waterman.
Well, thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you very much, folks, for coming out tonight to this inaugural event. 70% of all of us is water. 70% of us is water. Water is the pillar of life. It is a physical and a spiritual entity. And I bring this little message to you and others. I'm an applied geographer and an environmental planner. I'm still in harness. So even though follically challenged and faded, I'm still working in this space. And I've been in the environmental industry, as Lauren said, for the last 50 years. And my background has been on both flanks. I've been on the brown side of the environmental matter, and I did the first impact statement to be done in the country. And I worked on the green and inventoried the wilderness of southwest Tasmania. So I think I'm a little bit like an Irishman, or some Irishmen. The green, and that's part of my background. My mother's family were Irish Catholics. The orange, my father's family were Protestants from Ulster, so I stand before you as that white bit in the middle. What's the key message I want to give you? And the first and the most important thing, climate is the driver. We must not forget that. People tend to look at water post it coming out of the sky. If we don't understand the climatic conditions and understand how water is delivered to us and runs off, we'll lose the debate. I use the term changing climatic conditions rather than climate change. Changing climatic conditions. And I've got some notes that are in there for everyone, because if I rattle through definitions, you'll wonder what the old bugger was talking about. So I've prepared it for you. Climate change is a statistical measure. It's not cows' farts, it's not aircraft in the air, it's not global warming. It's a measure. Climate change is measured on a statistical baseline. The basis for that comes from the International Meteorological Organisation, and we use as a base to get a standard to measure things 1961 to 1990. And we do that all over the world. So we can measure changes in averages and changes in variance, in rainfall, in temperature, any parameter we wish. And having measured it, we know whether or not it has changed. And what we now know globally that is changing. It's changed, yes, in the past geologically. Yes, it's accelerated and it will continue. But you must acknowledge change. Drier and hotter conditions are a reality. But we can have adaptive strategies and actions to deal with that. And I've been working at the pit face with that for a number of years, and still am, on a project at the moment in Balranald Shire, down in the southwest of New South Wales, on increasing resilience to climate change with the community in that shire. And that project is built on work that we've been doing now since 2015. We started up at Etheridge Shire in the Gulf. We've worked in the northern part of the Murray-Darling Basin and the Central Basin, and that's where I am now, together with the Murrumbidgee. We need to understand the implications of water for commercial and domestic uses. We are profligate in our wastage of water. Profligate. We use expensive, highly treated water to flush our dunnies, water our lawns and clean our cars. It's got to be water for purpose. And the other part of the message that goes with that is that we have to think about separating the myths from the realities. And the first myth is we'll solve it all with dams. It's a myth. I'm from Kalgoorlie, born and bred there. We survived out there in the desert because there's a pipeline from the Mundaring Weir in the Darling Scarp to Kalgoorlie. And it watered places all along and to the south down to Esperance. Jim Gill, who was the head of WA Water Commission, retired about 12 years ago. I tried to look up to exactly the year. And Jim Gill oversaw the building over a 20-year period, as he said, of over $4 billion in new dams and heightening the tops of dams, lifting them. And in his valedictory, as he passed out of that system and retired, he said he regretted that. He regretted all that money because climatic conditions had changed so much that not one of those impoundments would ever fill. And one of the interesting case studies in looking at changing climatic conditions is to look at the pattern of rainfall reduction in the southwest of WA, and you can look at it at cycles, including the massive clearing of vegetation. Massive clearing of vegetation. So I put that as a point. We've heard all of the Butte schemes that are going to have. Bradfield's been around since JC played fullback for Jerusalem. So it's been knocked back by some very good people whose arithmetic is pretty good. We've also had in WA, we'll pipe the water from the Ord to Perth. And that you can guess that the calculations on the back of the beer sticker in the pubs just didn't even stack up. So we're looking at this whole problem of mythology about dams. We have become too dependent on centralised systems. We have centralised electricity, we have centralised water, we have centralised sewage. We pay a lot for it. We have to come back to basics and look at decentralised systems. They've been doing it in other parts of the world for donkey's years. And if we come to looking at it, our own house, how much water can we get off our roof? If we've got tanks, we only ever take a very small amount. What does that wasted water do? People say if it goes down the river, it's wasted. If it comes off our roofs, it's wasted. If it goes off the roads, it's wasted. And when we have community water that's available, the surplus from our roofs, what comes off hard standing, isn't it interesting? There was a fantastic brand new technology available for us. Developed, I think, either by the ancient Egyptians, because they used it, the Hittites used it, the Romans used it, and it's called cisterns. Cisterns, yes. You keep your community water, you keep it local, and you use it, you distribute it locally. We did some work in Peregian Springs a few years ago, and we demonstrated that not only could Peregian Springs meet all its own needs, you could supplement it by treating the water from the sewer line that went right through the suburb. You could sell the water, water fit for purpose by having multiple pipes, and the whole thing made big mobs of dough. And aren't we so driven by the need to make a buck out of something? So, myth, reality. The myth is it'll be solved with centralised system. Reality, we've got to become decentralised. And importantly with water, and I come back to the point I made at the start, if we don't understand where the rain's coming from, how can we operate centralised systems? Gill's is a great example of it. We can see it anywhere that you can get enough metadata to calculate it out. No rain equals no runoff equals no water for use either for agriculture or domestic purposes. Far West New South